What's up, Meta Nerds? In this video, we'll be breaking down the Bulwark trio of ships, and you'll see why I think they're one of the most unique, forgotten, useful, and ugly capital ships ever produced in the galaxy far, far away. They were all produced by the Techno-Union Engineers, which is a broad term for the companies under the Union umbrella, with the most direct producers being Transgalmag Industries Incorporated. The Bulwark would be their most notable creation, but also the sleek and unique Kirax assault fighter, though their biggest impact would be in the creation of the hyperspace transport rings for the Delta 7 and Eta 2s, which is a nice peek behind the propaganda curtain, as this corporation was within the Techno-Union but was able to sell crucial parts to Kuat, which fulfilled orders by the Republic. Most bulwarks were pumped out at the Foros shipyards located in high orbit over the uninhabited, mineral-rich world of Foros. To prove just how efficient of a business model it is to strip mine a whole planet, this shipyard is one of the oldest in the galaxy, rivaling the ring over Kuat, and has been converting rocks into ships for nearly 30,000 years. Located at L10 on the galactic map, it even served as the HQ for the Republic Navy during the Tianese War, around 24,000 BBY. And as you would expect, it was the target of countless Sith attacks, and would still be operating into the most recent Sith Empire of Darth Sidious. And if you want to launch your own raid, you should come join the Meta Nerds clan on Raid Shadow Legends. From August 24th to November 22nd, they're running one of the biggest events yet, the Asgard Divide. We get 4 new champions based off Norse mythology: Loki the Deceiver, Thor Feyhammer, Odin Feyfather, and Freya Fateweaver. Everyone can get the legendary champion Loki the Deceiver for free, simply by logging into Raid for 7 days between now and October 23rd. Keep logging in over those next 7 days and get even more rewards, and access to a second phase of rewards once the 14 days of login bonuses have been earned. And you can get the other 3 Norse mythology themed champions via in-game activities. And there is a time-limited dungeon. These dungeons are actually one of my favorite parts of Raid. It really forces you to build a great team, has tons of different items and skills and powers that all work synergistically. I wish some of my favorite monster capturing games would do this, because by having your entire team in the battle at once, it really takes advantage of all these different ways that you've upgraded them and the compounding effects of their different powers. Just start playing today, check it out using my link in the description or scan my QR code to get insane bonuses available only via my link. If it's your first time, you will immediately get a huge starter pack with an epic Grizzled Jarl from the Dwarves faction. And if you're level 15 or above, you'll get another starter pack after reaching level 15 that includes an epic Knight Errant. Come find me under my name Meta Nerds and join my clan Meta Nerds. And let's get to raiding. The Mark 1 would be 1,000 meters or 0.62 miles long, making it 62% in the ISD. We don't get a price, and there are no numbers given for the amount of turbolasers and ion cannons, though we get the very specific detail that its armored hull was so strong that captains had no fear in ramming through smaller ships. I would think that this means it's using uniquely strong alloys, as even the Venator is shown to take damage from the very light Vulture droids. Or as the Rebel and New Republic historian Vorin Naal put it, the engineers called the design the Bulwark Mark 1, a kilometer-long behemoth with turbolasers, ion cannons, and enough armor to ram small ships with impunity. When the Clone Wars broke out in 22 BBY, the Republic quickly moved to put a blockade over Foros. Now this is even worse than a SWAT team surrounding an armory, because Foros actually made the weapons in this analogy, they made the Starships, and it mostly pulls the raw materials to do so from its own planet. But like all highly complex creations, over time they did rely on specialized parts from all over the galaxy, so the hope was that the Republic blockade could prevent crucial supplies from coming in. Like if it was a weapons manufacturer, they couldn't get primers for the bullets. If just that one part is missing from these complex machines, it doesn't matter if you can make 99% of it in-house. And so this strategy worked for about 2 years. The Republic did not invade but kept them locked down, all while the engineers grew more bitter and ingenious. And you really don't want to make military engineers more bitter and ingenious. Eventually, they found workarounds and ways to reverse engineer the crucial missing parts, and the Bulwark fleet was born. Sullustan commander Duoningo would head this planetary jailbreak. In his perfectly named ship, the Unrepentant, these engineers who had been imprisoned by the Great Republic out of a fear that they might aid those planets that wished to secede, this historically allied world would see a flash of violence as this fleet broke the blockade. Again from our historian, quote, "With the old Sullustan Duoningo in charge of the Armada, the Bulwark fleet broke through the Republic's blockade and proceeded to smash military outposts throughout Coruscant's Sector 0. This Sector 0 is also called Sector 1, because why not, and was the site of the Republic's first sector army, with the most important military location outside of Coruscant and Kuat being the Anaxis War College and the surrounding shipyards. The Bulwark fleet was able to get on a string of victories through the Anaxis sector, but they were stopped by an unexpected foe. The engineers had been studying the tactics and capabilities of the Arquidins, Acclimators, and Venators, but launched in the first month of 20 BBY was the Great Victory 1 class Star Destroyer. This Victory fleet was used to protect Anaxis, and when the commanders came in high on their string of shocking wins, they got too big for their britches, or bulwarks, and they were finally stopped by the awesome and strange power of the Victory fleet. What makes the Victory so unique is that it's packed with 80 concussion missile tubes, 20 on each side, compared to only 4 torpedo tubes on the Venator. Those 4 were heavy torpedoes, but still you can see that this is an unprecedented attack option by the Republic fleet, which could have been delivering hundreds of missiles onto the Bulwark fleet at once. And suffice it to say, the brave and bold Duoningo went down with his ship. Or as it was recorded in the history books, quote, "Over the skies above the core world Anaxis, the admiral was killed when his flagship disintegrated." Later documents would reveal that the Victory class was pushed into combat because of the threat Ningo posed, fielding it 6 months ahead of schedule in this last-ditch effort to save Anaxis. And the future rebel leader Jan Dodana was one of the Victory class task force commanders. So the Bulwark was so effective it forced the Victory into battle. It would live on in the form of the Mark II and III. Well, even many of the ones would live on, being heavily modified over the years, with one serving in the New Republic's Rapid Response Task Force and seeing combat as late as 5 ABY, while another one got upgraded with a Class 0.6 hyperdrive, which puts it in Slave 1 territory, making it among the fastest ships in the history of the galaxy, which is kind of insane for this size. And it also got additional shielding and space for 3 starfighter squadrons, so something like 10 to 15 fighters, with several Jaduthu-class landing ships secured to the outside of its hull, which is one of my favorite things some forces do. We really only see this done regularly with the CIS capital ships and the droid fighters that all attach outside, a simple and easy way to transport units far beyond the internal capacity of the hangar bay. The Mark II design was rushed to production immediately, with the whole Ningo campaign being one of the best proofs of concept that you could ask for. Though sadly, there are literally no details on the Mark II. Luckily, with the Mark III, we get the most details of all. And it is the most impressive, but I do want to start with understanding the leadership at its creator company, Transgal Meg. By the time this was produced, the Republic was now the Empire, and Chief Administrator Braig Forul was at least outwardly a fervent supporter of his new lord. He was such a trusted ally that the company was given a planet. When Narg was discovered in 3 BBY, they let Forul act as its mini-emperor, in part because this world was home to a long-lost human colony. A colony that likely made itself lost on purpose, maybe actively killing scouts or creating rumors Scooby-Doo style in order to make sure there weren't any visitors, because the planet was full of extremely xenophobic humans. So xenophobic that even Palpatine's leadership weren't sure what to do with them. It's hard to imagine, but even lording over alien races was disgusting to them. They thought humans shouldn't be interacting with aliens at all. And of course this made it difficult to integrate them even into the military. So they figured they would reward the loyal CA Forul, or dump this problem on him and let him figure out a way to put them to work making ships. Like our World Wars history shows, the xenophobes do have a knack for creating great machines, and they made the sleek Zytar and the glorious Bulwark Mark III. And here's where 3 different theories start. The simplest is Forul just didn't have any ideological support for the Empire. It was just a pure opportunist, as he sold products to both Black Sun and the Rebel Alliance. The second is the funniest, that perhaps the xenophobes hated that the Empire was even working with aliens so much that they would prop up the crime and rebel elements and perhaps harbor dreams that they could rise up in the chaos to replace it. I think that's the least likely, but the most crazy, so I wanted to mention it. I actually think he was a secret rebel supporter, because he knew it would be a long, tortured death sentence if he was caught selling the Bulwark Mark III to rebels. This was so brazen and insane of a decision that to me it only makes sense if it was driven by moral or political convictions. Even the Incom X-Wings had to go through a lot of rigmarole to fall into the hands of rebels, but it is stated that this behemoth was eventually openly known to be sold to rebels, and that in of itself would be a declaration of war on the Empire. And the fact that the rebels accepted them is a great example of not judging your allies too harshly during a time of war. Because imagine what the fish folk, Mon Mothma and Leia, would have thought if they actually met the people welding and wiring this thing together. The most notable feature is its length. At 2,500 meters or 1.6 miles, it was more than 1.5 times the size of the Imperial class. But like I'm always trying to stress, it's the volume that you should be measuring, which was the total length of the Mark I, twice the ISD, and it was around 1,500 meters wide, which was nearly the length of the ISD. I'm no math wizard, so let's just do it straight as if they were rectangular prisms. We get 717 million cubic meters for the ISD, and 3.75 billion cubic meters for the BM3. I'd imagine it's a Class 2 hyperdrive. It specifically has what's called extensive shielding. We don't get exact numbers on the turbo lasers, ion cannons, or tractor beams, but likely to streamline everything and have this behemoth have all of its systems just run off of Tabana gas. They do not try and match the Victory class and pack in a ton of missile systems. It does act like a carrier in that it has 120 starfighters split into 10 squadrons. It could transport 4 regiments planetside to capture or secure objectives. The Republic had regiments of 2,648 clones, but other times it could just be 1,000 troops, while the CIS droid regiments were around 3,500, especially since this was used by the rebels, so around 4,000 troops with accompanying transports. This is still only 1/4 the troop capacity of the Acclimator and less than the ISD. I'd imagine you could cram more people into it, but that's true for every ship, so I'm leaving it at 4K. Still, this is an amount of rebel forces far greater than we ever see deployed, and shows that some of the most dramatic battles sadly happen off-screen. And so if you wonder what the rest of all this space is filled with, I'd imagine it's a ton of redundant generators to power everything, including that extensive shielding, with hull armor that is far thicker than most ships, allowing it to absorb fire head-on, not just dissolving across a shield, but like a bulletproof plate of thick steel. And so again, that needs more power, and just look at how much of the ISD is dedicated to power generation. So that'd be even more true for this larger and even more power-hungry behemoth. With everything from the brute smashing through objects option, the firepower and shielding, and then the fighters and landing craft for its small army, you can see why this thing took on a mythical existence in the Rebellion, with rumors of the mobile fortress circling. The only obvious problem is that, of course, a full fleet of ISDs and support craft could take out this single target with concentrated fire, no matter how good your shields and how thick your armor were, and the rebels couldn't exactly overtly go on the warpath conquering territory. Kinda goes against the whole hit-and-run strategy. Where it could excel is in areas later in the war when the Empire was being spread too thin, and where even if they concentrated their might, they might eventually fall into a trap. At best, a Pyrrhic victory, losing many of their forces, guaranteeing a PR victory for the rebels with tons of losses, as well as the potential of having captured ships that snowballed into growing the rebel fleets. Locations that were that protected were few, but include the Mon Calamari shipyards, not the ones on Mon Cala but the ones hidden out in space, and the Celestin Home Guard. Because they were so powerful, they were able to remain somewhat independent. They couldn't openly support the rebellion, but they had far more autonomy than most. And they would license the Mark IIIs, so we get Celestin-made versions that would have to be set up for hijacking by rebel forces. The Arrow of Celest was famous for its brazen breakthrough that was reminiscent of the very first blockade buster over Forost. Since Imperial ships were there trying to stop this problem of rebel hijackers, they likely suspected the Celestins were in on it. And calling their bluff that they were helpless victims and would appreciate help, this hijacking plan was perfect, because it made it so the Imps couldn't just claim that the Celestins were giving up the ships to rebels, because those rebel thieves even bested the Imps. With just a skeleton crew, they were able to push through the Imperial blockade and make the jump to hyperspace, where it would then act like a defense fleet and secure rebel space. So ironically, it would end up fulfilling the role of the Victory fleet over Anaxis that sparked this very line of ships.
It's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
My favorite feature is the command deck, this little semicircle right here, as if to stress the scale of this thing. Still sticking out a bit, but not like the Star Destroyers, and can only be hit from the front, while being easier to protect with the ship's shielding. There are 3 massive ion engines at the rear with 5 auxiliary, while these pair of hangars on each side are perfect for not sending ships straight out into fire, while also being heavily protected by these guns scattered all over, but more concentrated toward this first third. Though they did not play a role in the major battles of the Civil War, they bet on the right team, and old Chief Administrator Breg Ferrul, by all accounts, kept his planet and kept pumping these out for the New Republic. Though I doubt any of the workers were invited to the New Republic victory parades. They would play their largest role in 25 ABY during the Yuuzhan Vong War, where at least 4 of them used their bulk to evacuate the planet Reichel. Though even if they carried off tens of thousands, most of the civilians were left to the horrific deaths inflicted by the life-altering arts of the Vong. The ships would go on to pull off one of the greatest reversals of this war. The Vong had hopes of turning the planet Shremar into one big harvest, so joint forces with the Imperial Remnant and New Republic worked together to keep up a blockade. They feigned a retreat and then returned to pin the Vong ships near the surface, and the bulwarks played a major part in raining down death via orbital bombardments, disintegrating much of the ships and destroying their supply fields, before safely escaping through hyperspace. That's it for its breakdown, and as for behind the scenes facts, the Bulwark Mark I was technically first introduced in 2005 in the New Essential Chronology, but was a nod to the Bulwark-class battlecruiser from the 1998 video game Star Wars Rebellion. We barely get a mention of the Mark II in the Essential Guide to Warfare, and all of them have been brought into canon via the Rise of Separatists, the RPG guidebook. So that's it for the breakdown. Please hit that like button, it really is the best way to help me out. Subscribe to see more and check out these other videos, and be sure to check out Raid by using those links down in the description or scanning this QR code. But most important of all, remember, if you ever find yourself running against Mon Mothma for office, just keep bringing up the Bulwark shipwrights, and the Force will be with you, always.